Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and, in fact, available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast extra edition. I'm here with David Eckert, the Clarion Ledger beat writer for the Ole Miss Rebels that is just finished up covering fall camp, as this interview is going to air on, I think, Sunday night or Saturday night. So some things might happen because we're recording this on Thursday, just so everybody knows. So, David, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be done with fall camp, getting ready to cover some real football. And I am sure, Stephen, that absolutely nothing will happen between now and Saturday night that you would have liked to have talked about on this show. Nothing's going to happen.
Not a chance at all. I guarantee. The funny thing is, I do most of my interviews on Thursdays, just so everybody knows. Whenever I do an interview for the weekend, and when you see it on Saturday and Sunday, it was probably recorded on Thursday. And when Camarion Franklin committed, everybody's like, oh, I guess recording that interview on Thursday gives you an idea of what they thought. It's like, no, I just record my interviews on Thursday because I like to have a weekend too.
Yeah, man. No, it's important. You gotta front load the content. You gotta have some stuff in the bag, man. I do it too. We all do it.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Let's see. I'm 20 years in this game. I actually went to J school at Ole Miss back in the early 2000s, but went to the Defense Information School, military trained journalist back in like 99. So I worked at AFN and all that. So I'm about 20 years in this process. So yeah, I've kind of got an idea of what the workflow needs to be at this point.
Sure. I would wager that you are, I don't know, are there other military trained journalists? I bet there's not that many of those.
There's more than you think.
Really?
Fun fact, and all the people listening to the show is going to be absolutely nuts, but Denfos is on Fort Meade, Maryland. Fort Meade, Maryland is the same base where NSA is located.
Okay.
Okay. So you're going to put people learning how to be a photographer with other photographers on Fort Meade and tell them to go around and take pictures. And if you point your camera in the general direction of NSA, men in black suits come and talk to you for a day.
Jeez.
So it's interesting. But up in Laurel, Maryland, I had a good time. Met my wife there.
Oh, there you go. It was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about fall camp since you just got through seeing it all. What is your fall camp takeaway that you're kind of like filing away for the season to see? Like, this is what I think. Now let me see if I was right.
I think that the defense might be good a little bit more quickly than I had anticipated. They seem to me, right? I mean, you bring in a new coordinator, you have 8 million new pieces that you're trying to incorporate along with the new staff. I mean, to me, that is like a classic recipe for a defense that's going to need a few weeks to figure it out, right? I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the case. I think they're definitely ahead of where I thought they would be. Practice-wise, I want to see if that translates game-wise. I don't know how much we'll really learn from Mercer in that regard. Probably nothing. But, Tulane, you'll learn a lot. So I think maybe, that huge game that's going to be a ranked game unless Tulane loses to South Al in week 1, maybe that defense is a little bit further ahead than where I thought they'd be for that game.
Ole Miss has 20 players that are on the Senior Bowl watch list at the moment. 12 of them are defensive players, if you go and look at it. And that tells me right there, I'm looking at this information and like leading the country in Senior Bowl watch list players. I'm like, this probably doesn't mean nothing.
No, it doesn't. You're right, for sure. I mean, they've got talent on the defensive side of the ball. The way that they play offense is an obstacle. Right. It's difficult to play quality defense when your offense is going a million miles an hour. And just making that all into a cohesive unit under Pete Golding is another obstacle. But, talent-wise, there's no reason why this can't be like a middle-tier SEC defense. And if that's the case, then you're in a great spot with the way that Ole Miss is going to play offense, right? So I am just really curious to see where this goes defensively and how quickly it gets there.
Well, when the season starts, we are going to be in game week starting Monday. The routine is about to begin, which, some journalists that cover football, they like the camp thing because it's a little bit different. It's something that's a little bit extra. There's content all over the place. But then once you get into the season and that routine starts, I think there's like a comfort that is developed in the routine.
Yeah, of course. We actually, USA Today sends us like, all right, here's what you're doing Monday, here's what you're doing Tuesday, here's what you're doing Wednesday in season. And we just got that, and I'm like, it's just going to be really nice to be able to know exactly what I'm doing every day. I love the routine. I really do. I'm just excited. I'm excited because just with the way that Ole Miss has built this thing, and last year this was the case, I'm sure, as well, even though I wasn't here for it. Like, it does feel like you're solving a mystery a little bit once this thing gets started, because there's so many pieces that you just don't know what you've got. So I'm giddy. I'm excited about the routine. I'm excited about the curtain opening, if you will. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Now, this is a weird question, and I do not know how old you are. So if you don't know the answer to this, I apologize. But what Ole Miss is going through right now with the transfer portal, it's an argument that somebody my age has completely heard, because it was the same thing the national media put on Kansas State back around the turn of the century when they had Michael Bishop and they were essentially a powerhouse because they were building their team off of JUCOs. And everybody's like, you can't build your team off of JUCOs. And that argument has like been repurposed into the transfer portal, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That Kansas State thing is way over my head, but it is true because people are skeptical, and really, Lane Kiffin has offered some skepticism with this, right? Like, he's said, hey, maybe our culture isn't what we want it to be. Hey, maybe we aren't as cohesive at this point in the year as we would be in an ideal scenario. But if you're Ole Miss, right, like, I don't think you go and you become better than Alabama and better than LSU and better than all of these other elite SEC schools by doing it the same way as they are. So I think for a program like Ole Miss, I think it's smart. But you do have the element, like I said, of, all right, it's week one. Let's see what we got. Let's see what we are, because I don't think you know.
Yeah. What are you expecting in that Mercer game?
A bloodbath.
Not necessarily the score, just talking
sure,
about like,
sure. I imagine, like a lot of these FCS Power Fives, you'll get the first team through the first half, see where you are. If it's 35-0 at halftime or something like that, then you start rolling through the depth chart a little bit. So you can see, all right, who are the guys that are going to play? Who are the freshmen that are going to play? Who are the freshmen that they're not worried about conserving that red shirt? It's one of those where I think the second half is probably going to be more instructive than the first half, just because, look, I mean, it's so tempting every year to just, when you play this FCS game, immediately just take the bloodbath that you're going to witness and start trying to draw conclusions from it. I do it myself, and I wish that I could resist. But I think what you're going to learn more than anything is, all right, who is positioned where on the depth chart? What do they think about this guy? What is the order that things are going to happen in rotation wise, more so than, all right, Ole Miss is really good this year, or they're very good this year. That's what I'm going to take from it anyway.
So let's say the game is 42-7 at halftime or something like that. Is any rep that Spencer Sanders takes after that, is that a wasted rep?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Hmm.
I'm going to say no, because I do think there's an element of, all right, like Spencer Sanders, I don't think is 100% like he's not where Jackson Dart is in this offense as far as like understanding, having repped it. So if you intend to use Spencer Sanders at some point, if you intend for Spencer Sanders to be a reliable backup for this team, then no, I don't think you're wasting reps by getting him in, in a blowout. I think that's something they probably need to do, to be honest.
Well, let me tell you why I asked that question. I
Sure.
think that 2024 is the most important season in the history of Ole Miss football. And
Interesting.
that is because in the 12-team playoff, this is a chance that there could legitimately be a home game played, which would be the biggest football game that has ever been played in Vaught Hemingway Stadium. You're going to have the best running back in the country, a year two Pete Golding defense, which he's obviously showing that he knows what he's doing. And
Hmm.
Lane Kiffin has stacked talent and skill positions all over the field. So Ole Miss is in position to compete for that. If Jackson Dart has the year that we think Jackson Dart is going to have, let's say he puts up 3,500 yards and 30 touchdowns, and all of a sudden he goes pro. That leaves a situation going into 2024 where you have all this talent, and it's
Hmm.
either going to be a redshirt sophomore and Walker Howard or Austin Simmons, and that competition's probably started already. But
Yeah,
those are the two players I'm interested in that Mercer game.
for sure. And they'll play. Steve,
Hmm.
I'm sure. Maybe not Austin Simmons if they intend to redshirt Austin Simmons, but they do get the 4 games now, so maybe. Uh, but yeah, and that's an interesting point. I do think like I do think that if, as you say, they feel they've got an opportunity in 2024, and really, even if they don't, if they're not confident in what Walker Howard or Austin Simmons can give them, they're going to go get somebody, right? They
Hmm.
went and got 2 guys with Jackson Dart sitting in their laps. So, it's we were, the theme of this conversation has been roster building, the transfer portal a little bit, right? But I do think like it's hard for that reason. It's hard to project into 2024 and kind of make decisions with reps based on that, because you don't know what you're going to have by the end of March, next year.
Heck, you don't know what you're going to have by the end of December. The way it's going right now. So, which players against Mercer and maybe even against Tulane are you expecting to kind of surprise that we're not thinking of?
I think TJ Young looks really good. I'm excited about him. He kind of fell into like, all right, group of 5 guy. Let's see what, a little bit of healthy skepticism with him, but I think he's going to be a really good player defensively for them. Um, you know, I really want to see Isaac Ukwu. Uh, I like his build. It doesn't seem like he's going to start at the moment, but they want to be really aggressive, rotating on that defensive front. So he's going to be important. I want to see him. Offensively, again, like a little bit of healthy skepticism as a precaution, but I think Cayden Lee is going to play. True freshman wide out. He got a lot of reps in the walkthrough that we saw Thursday. Uh, I don't know what Jordan Watkins' status is. That might have something to do with that. But I think regardless, especially once, if and when they get into garbage time, he's going to play, and he's been really good this spring. So offensively, he's the guy that I've kind of got circled. I want to see whether he can maybe make a move and potentially play in some meaningful games for them.
And I'm assuming you've seen Jam Griffin. What stylistically type player? Give the Ole Miss fans that are watching an idea of what Jam Griffin will be.
Yeah, I think he's a bowling ball. That type of running back. Um, he kind of described himself like change of pace is what he described himself as, and I think that's pretty accurate. Because I don't really know, aside from maybe Matt Jones further down the depth chart, I don't really know if Ole Miss had that before him. Um, so I think he's really physical. Yeah, kind of between the tackles type of guy.
Okay. Anyway, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And every day is Sunday morning. Jeremy Scott is supposed to go. I'm recording that one Saturday morning. So if technology gets us, bear with us. But right now, he's scheduled to be the Sunday morning broadcast as well. And Tom Vanderford will be here Sunday night. David, thank you so much for stopping by. And I guess we'll talk again, I think the week after the Mercer game. I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Sounds good, man. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Stephen.
All right, buddy.